Good evening, and welcome to Evolving Soul here on Blog Talk Radio. Evolving Soul is a spiritual talk radio show and podcast dedicated to spirit and the many aspects of spirituality. We want to provide spiritual resources for the total transformation of mind, body, and spirit. The radio show will highlight interviews with spiritual lecturers and teachers, providing readers with a targeted insight of such teachings, which ideally will help people to live a more empowered and authentic life. I am your host, Anthony Mrocka, and I have a very special guest tonight, which I'm really looking forward to getting to interview this evening. Paul Selig, let me just read his bio here. Paul Selig received his master's degree from Yale. He served on the faculty of New York University for over 25 years and is the former director of the MFA Creative Writing Program at Goddard College. A spiritual experience in 1987 left him clairvoyant. Described as a medium for the living, Paul actually also has the unique ability to step into and become the people his clients ask about, often taking on their personalities and physical characteristics as he hears them telepathically. He is considered to be one of the foremost spiritual channels working today and is the author of the breakthrough works of channel literature, providing an extraordinary program for personal and planetary evolution as humankind awakens to its own divine nature. His fourth and newest title is The Book of Mastery. His previous books include I Am the Word, The Book of Love and Creation, The Book of Knowing and Worth. He leads channeled workshops and seminars internationally. For more information about Paul, where he's going to be and all that good stuff, you could reach him at www.paulselig.com. Let me just spell that for you, Pauls, as in Sam, ELIG.com. And without any further ado, let me just bring Paul on here because I have a lot of questions for him. I actually also, just for all the listeners, I've received a reading from Paul about 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And I will say it was one of the best readings that I've gotten. And it was just so insightful and very unique and very different. But without further ado, Paul, are you with us?
I'm with you. Hi, Anthony. Thanks.
I have questions, but first, I just want to get the listeners kind of into, who you are, what you're about, what really happened to you. So, how did everything just start for you? I know, because I know of you and I read your book. But how did this all start for you?
You know, I was 25. I had a list of things I had to have achieved in the world that I thought would make me okay. I got the whole list. I wasn't okay. And really, out of sheer necessity, I began to look for something more. So that's how I came to spirituality, not because I even believed in anything. In fact, I've been raised pretty much an atheist. But at this period when I was 25, I actually started praying for the first time in my life. And I heard a voice telling me how to get my act together, and I listened to it. It was the first voice I ever heard. And then a few months later, I started to open up, clairvoyantly, which was unexpected. I had sort of an energetic experience that left me seeing little lights around people, which was, for me, just the beginning of the opening. And then, I studied energy healing as a way to get a context for that, and I found out that when I had my hands on people, I could hear things for them, and I found out that I was clairsentient or empathic, and I was, feeling what was going on in people's bodies. So I I'm really not a trained medium, and everything that I do, I sort of didn't know that I could do or would do until I did it. And the channeling really just evolved. I kept a group going in my apartment for probably about 20 years, because I was really just interested in sitting in the energy, because when I worked, there'd be this, very wonderful, potent energy that would come through and fill the room, and I wanted to be part of that and share that experience. And, gradually my guides began to bring through teachings, and they've been delivering books through me, and, entire books that are dictated into a recorder and then transcribed and require no editing at all since 2009. So that's been my work. And that's the story, really. It's a funny story. It's just how it happened for me.
And what, you say about going into the you're looking for a spiritual awakening or something, but if I'm not mistaken, you had like a Kundalini experience.
Yeah.
It was an instantaneous type of experience.
I don't know what it was. Yeah, I did. This is what happened. 1987, I went up to the roof of the building that I lived in. It was the night of this thing called the harmonic convergence. People were saying people are going to be waking up, and I wanted to be woken up, and I'd gone from living in a world where there was no such thing as God about 4 months earlier, and suddenly I was in a world where maybe there was. So I figured, well, if there is one, why can't you ask to be woken up? And I had an experience, it was energy moving through my body and out through the top of my head. And people later said it sounded like a spontaneous Kundalini awakening or a Shaktipa or a soul awakening. I don't know what. For all I know, I was hyperventilating, but it was a profound physical experience for me. And that's when the lights started coming. So it was an opening, and it was very palpable. And when I work, that's the energy that seems to be present, for people when they come to the groups and work with the texts that come through me.
Gotcha. When did you actually know you had a gift as a channel or an empath?
The empathic work kicked in first. I was volunteering at a place that was providing services for people with life-challenging illness in New York, and I started to feel what was going on in their bodies, and that was empathic. So I was surprised at the beginning of it because I didn't know that was possible. But it was kind of obvious. I'd be sitting on the subway and my left shoulder would start to hurt, and I'd look at the guy next to me and his, shoulder would be in a cast, So I realized that I was picking up on other people. And it was sort of, at the beginning, uncomfortable and exciting and surprising all at the same time because I didn't know what was happening, except I figured it out pretty quickly, and now I rarely sort of get assailed that way. When I'm in session with people, I'm working that way intentionally. But that was the beginning of the empathic work. Now I work primarily as, I'd say, more of a mental and emotional empath. So if you want to know what's going on with your sister, I can step into your sister and I'll probably start to look like her. I really sort of take on the persona, their demeanor, and the expressions of people that I'm tuning into. It's an odd thing, but I just think that that's an extension of the clairsentience or the empathic ability.
Gotcha. So there was no weird experience per se, like all of a sudden you're talking to someone and you felt you started taking on their pain. It was literally because you were helping.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of them. There's a lot of weird experiences, A lot of them. I was working with some woman, at the Manhattan Center where I was volunteering, and she had a very large chest, and the whole time I was working with her, I had this cutting sensation across my middle back, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. And when she got off the table, she said, "Oh my God, my bra's so tight." I realized that was her bra straps I was feeling. But I've had hot flashes. I know what it's like to feel pregnant. I've had these sort of amazing experiences, of feeling what goes on in other people. At the beginning, I needed proof to sort of support my ability to conceive that this was even happening, because again, this wasn't anything that anybody taught me. It just began to happen, and it was surprising. And now it's just sort of normal. It's just part of the way that I live my life, and it's what I do in my practice much of the day.
Now, that was a long time ago. So there must have been a period of time. I got to think that there was a period of time that you really didn't tell people what you were experiencing, or you didn't tell people that you were doing this type of work. I know that you were a college professor, I believe, and so in different schools, I believe. So what was that like finally coming out per se?
Well, it was funny, I was at NYU for many years, and I didn't really talk about it. When I was first opening up in my early 30s, I used to teach the kids how to see auras and stuff because it was fun to me, and I wanted to share it, and I was excited. And I realized, well, that's not what I'm being paid to do here, and it wasn't appropriate, and I just sort of stopped. And then I got kind of quiet about it, and it was about 3 years ago maybe now that I was asked to be on this TV show called the Unexplained, and the producers wanted to film me at NYU, and I said, well, that's not going to happen. My boss, my department chair, doesn't know what I do, and I really don't want to jeopardize my other life. And I hung up the phone, and then I thought about it for a minute, and I said, the one thing my guides teach consistently is about not making choices based in fear, and I realized I'd just done that. So I got on the phone, I called the chair of my department. I said, listen, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a sensitive, and this show wants to do a piece on me. And he said, oh, Bio Channel, that's great, send him over. And I don't even think he realized the nature of my work. But all of a sudden I had to confront this room full of college kids, and I said to the kids, because they were going to be filmed, I said, listen, I don't know if you know this about me. And they said, yeah, we know. And they'd found me on the web. There's tons of video, and there already was, of me channeling online. And they were being very sweet about it. I wasn't talking about it, and so they were being polite and not bringing it up. And once it was in the open, they were quite interested. But, I did this work quietly, intentionally for many years. I actually had a website without my name on it. You had to sort of know somebody to find it, and I really wasn't looking to be found. I was quite happy just doing this little group in my apartment and seeing people occasionally for readings. And as the work got to be more well-known, mostly through the books, and I just stopped caring really what people thought about my work and how strange I looked doing it, that it sort of stopped being an issue. And now I've left academia. I'm actually now on the board of trustees of Goddard, where I used to teach, and I'm really honored to be in that capacity, but I'm also really happy not to be in faculty meetings all the time. This is now my work, and my life is having to adjust to that.
And I just see you all the time now. You're just traveling more and more and more, so I think it's wonderful. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
There's one thing here too. I'm going to start. I have questions. I have questions about
Sure.
I Am the Word. That it's funny because I just went back and I had listened to it before on Audible.com, and I think at the time of the when you read for me, I had asked you if the frequency was in, if I listened to it, and you explained to me, but. Funny enough, when I knew I was going to interview you, all of a sudden my daughter started handing me, and again I have a 3-year-old, a little older than 3, Mila. She started handing me I Am the Word. So I thought it was funny, and she has no clue. And so I said, okay, you know what, I'll read this again. So, but I want to just start with the Book of Mastery because I do know that's your latest one. I want to start here, and then I'll kind of digress and ask my questions about I Am the Word. Just for the readers, the Book of Mastery, you have I Am the Word as a trilogy too. There's 3 books in there, correct?
Yep.
And then the Book of Mastery is the first book of another trilogy, right?
That's correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
And what's the difference between the two? Like, with the Book of Mastery, what is it different than your first 3?
Wow. It's a good question. The Book of Mastery is really about being the divine self in practice and in manifestation. I think I Am the Word is the foundational teaching. It was the first book that came through me in 2009, and it was unexpected. I wasn't planning to channel a book. The guide said, we have a book to write, and if you take 2 weeks, we'll do it, and that's what happened. But the book I Am the Word, they call that sort of the teaching of embodiment, and they attune the reader to a vibration, to an energy, which they call the Word, which is, they say it's the energy of the Creator in action. And for many people, it's a very tangible activation. You can begin to work with the energy. The Book of Mastery is really about the being of that in its full expression, and that's what this whole trilogy is about. And they're talking about being the divine self in all aspects of your life. And they're also beginning to talk about alchemy and the ability to really transform the material realm that we're existing in through our consciousness, through the realization of the divine self. When they say it's the divine self, it actually transforms matter. It's not the small self. So they really, I think, have taken their teachings out of the theoretical into the practical and the manifest. And there's energy that sort of accompanies all of these books that is sort of increasing and stepped up. They say at the beginning of Mastery, that they're working with a one-room schoolhouse, and they spend about the first 60 or 70 pages, I think, bringing everybody together for this journey that the guides, take the reader on, which is really towards an awareness of our union with our source. They spend a lot of time in the new book about, talking about the belief in separation. But they also talk a lot about, our relationship with our lives and how we see ourselves in the world. So I think their teachings have been really consistent. They just seem to escalate, and they're getting more and more into practical manifestation. It's funny because, that was a year ago, a little more, that I finished channeling that, and there's a new one that I just finished 3 weeks ago called The Book of Truth, which is the next book in the trilogy. And so my brain is really still fried by that one because I'm very excited by those teachings, which are actually taking it even farther, this whole idea of sort of alchemy and transforming the physical plane that we're on, we're all sharing, by our collective agreements and by who we say and claim ourselves to be. So that's the best I can answer that tonight. Maybe tomorrow I could answer it a little better, but that's my effort.
So let me ask you this too then. All right, now let me go backwards here back to I Am the Word, because that's, like I said, I'm actually literally in the process. I'm almost towards the end of reading it. This time I'm really reading it, and I realize now why I'm reading it, because halfway through I started taking down notes on the side of the page. I'm underlining, and it's so funny because I'm like, I got to ask this guy, is there a study group? And all of a sudden, that was like I wrote it down to ask a question for the interview. And then yesterday, I went to your website to try to look at your bio, to grab your bio, and here somehow, some way, I clicked on this, clicked on that, and here I see study groups. And there's a lot of study groups, actually, around the country, I see. And then all of a sudden, and my other question was, someone's got to make, does he have a form or something? Because I'm sitting here trying to write down all the, the intentions or saying of the things that the guys are speaking about. And then I found that someone actually did do that too. There's a 9-page on your website. You can go and get the 9-page study guide per se. Because I'm sitting here trying to, how am I going to remember what page this is at? How am I going to remember this and this and that? But it's interesting. The guides say there's divine in everything. So when you speak about that, and I know that I've had discussions with people, I guess on a deeper level discussion, people would say, so there's divine in Hitler, so there's divine in politics. Is there, do you see what I'm saying? It's in every? I mean, your guides are saying it's in everything. Yeah, that they are. They're pretty explicit about that, but they're not necessarily talking about the surface level that we're perceiving things at. At a fundamental level, they would say we're all of the same stuff. This whole belief in separation, the guides say, we believe ourselves to be separate from our source, and consequently we believe ourselves to be separate from everybody else as well. One of their big teachings in the Book of Mastery, and in the new book as well, is the teaching of the kingdom, and they say that the kingdom is the awareness of the divine in all manifestation. But they say that the small self, or the personality self, isn't the one who can perceive at this level. It's the divine self. So the teaching of the books is very much about the realization of who we are as the divine self, not as the personality structure or the ego or whatever you want to call it. So it's the divine self that has that level of realization. The small self is kind of moored in this sense of I'm right, she's wrong, we're safe, they're dangerous, whatever we want to do. But the guides say, and many in all different books, frankly, at this point, but it's one of their simple teachings, is you really can't be the light and hold anyone or anything in darkness. They say what you hold in darkness ties you to it.
And then that's your agreement. That's the relationship. They say that everything you see in your life, whatever it is, and that includes, I think they would probably say on the news, if you can perceive it, if you're in witness to it, they would say you're in vibrational accord to it. It doesn't mean you created it. It means you're in accord with it, which means essentially your consciousness is impressing into that thing with what you decide or say it is. So when we affirm something is evil or we affirm something is terrible, we're actually contributing to the very thing we say we don't want. They would say, I think, that the realization of the divine in all these things is the realization that there is nothing that can be outside of God. If God is everything, that includes everything, not just the things we would approve about. That's the hypocrisy of religion. We're holy and they're not. What a load of crap. The guides say, all is holy. Everything is holy. Now, they do say, if I'm remembering this correctly, murder is not holy, but the murderer is. But the murderer has forgotten his own divinity. He's moved so far away from that in his consciousness or in his awareness of himself that he doesn't realize who and what he is, which is why the guides are trying to bring us back to this whole idea of the truth of who we are, like it or not, agree to it or not, as the divine self. That's what they keep saying. I struggle with this, truthfully. I have a loud ego and a personality and all these things too. But I do understand what they're saying, and I think that's the only way to really comprehend that teaching. It's not to say Hitler was a good guy. He was a monster, but I guess they would probably also say the divine is active in all things, no matter what level of vibration that it's operating at, and that's my understanding.
Gotcha. It's interesting too because in the beginning of I Am the Word, basically again like you explained, I Am the Word was kind of the beginning, the teachings or what they want to talk about. But you speak of the Christ frequency. The guys speak about the Christ frequency and aligning to it, and that we're all on this journey really to become the Christ itself of ourselves, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
When they speak of the Christ frequency, is that's the same as Christ consciousness? I'm taking it.
Yeah, well, this is how their definition of Christ is very specific. And they say that the Christ is the aspect of the Creator that can be realized in material form as who and what you are. That's the truth of who you are. They say it's the truth of who everyone is, like it or not, agree to it or not. And the realization of this is what transforms you and your world and the one you see before you. The realization of the divine in something else can only be done from one who accepts that he or she is of that source themselves. So the consciousness, I understand it, is the awareness of this, the awareness or the alignment to that level of vibration or consciousness that perceives the divine in all manifestation.
Makes sense. I got it. Also, too, it's something specific here in I Am the Word. In Chapter 5, which was boulders, and I just was going through that the other day, and it's funny because in that chapter, the guides speak about we create our reality. Mm-hmm. What does that encompass? And let me just keep going in a sec. I'm going to give you a bunch of questions here because these were just my thoughts as I wrote them down that day. Because this is, trust me, this has been like my biggest thing, and especially, do we come and create our reality? Is there some of spiritual destiny type of a thing? And so, what I had wrote down here was, what does that encompass? But great sages speak of surrender and that things unfold in front of us. Is there truth to that, or is there no destiny? Does the soul not come here with a plan? Where do spirit guides kind of come into? You know what I mean? If each one of us has potentially a master guide or a guide with us that's trying to help us along, and most people don't even realize who they are, but the people that are in our line of work and that kind of stuff, obviously, that they always want to try to connect with their guide in somewhat. So where would spirit guides come in? If someone has a toddler with cancer, that's 3 or 4 years old, it's so hard to think that someone created, or the baby created, the toddler created that on that fundamental level. So how does that all kind of tie in?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert. I can tell you what I understand so far. It's possible that the guides may need to come in and correct me because I sometimes get things wrong or I misinterpret. I believe that we actually come here with things we need to learn, and, what those things are may be fairly, I would just want to say, awful to the personality self, or our idea of what should be based on our limited agreements of how our lives are supposed to unfold, but they may be what we need to learn and what we came to learn. The guides say that everything is an opportunity for our evolution, for the soul's growth and evolution. Now, they're not saying, I don't hear them say that we're creating everything, but they do say, as I said earlier, that we're in agreement to everything. And agreement doesn't mean, again, conscious agreement. I agreed to be in a car crash. I mean, who the hell would agree to be in a car crash? But I think what they would mean agreement would be in vibrational accord. And what that means is nothing really that we can experience can be experienced outside of what we're in alignment to. Now, they also say that there is individual agreement and there's collective agreement. So I didn't start the war, but I'm complicit to the war because I can perceive the war. As one who perceives the war, at whatever level I'm choosing to perceive it as, my consciousness is informing that thing. How I hold and how I hold anything in consciousness, they would, I think, say, means the level of vibrational accord that I hold. Here's an example. One of the things that they say is, we've all lived on a planet for so long with war that we can't conceive of a planet without it. And they said because of that, we're always going to have war. That's our choice. We keep making it. We keep replicating what we've known. Until we can conceive of something different, we can't claim it. You see, so we're still in vibratory accord to what we've been taught to expect or see. Now, predestiny, I mean, I don't know. This is what I get. I once actually was speaking at a conference. I was channeling at a conference after somebody else who said there is no such thing as free will. And my guides got up there and said there is free will. You choose what side of the bed you get out of. You really are choosing. Now, people sometimes think, and I don't know what this is like for you. I know you're very good at your work, but they say to me, oh, this must be so easy for you. And I say, are you kidding me? Like they assume that I've got a pipeline, towards every right choice. And my guides don't really tell me what to do. If I were to say, is this a good time? If I wanted to walk into traffic, I think they would let me. If I were to say, is this a good time to cross the street? They'd probably say, not wise. But they're honoring my ability to choose. And I often do get instruction, and I do the opposite. And then I end up usually sort of learning from that, or, paying the price, if you prefer. Where do guides come into this? The guides that I work with seem to be teachers. That's what their job seems to be with me. I do think that we have help and we're being steered, towards higher choices perhaps, or in support of learning our lessons. But the work that I do doesn't seem to be that much at the level of personal guides. When I'm reading for people, I don't hear their guides. They may well be talking to mine. I'm often hearing the person, or I'm hearing the person at a higher level or at a soul level who's explaining to me why they're choosing what they're choosing, or what there is to learn from a situation, or what the block is that needs to be cleared or understood in a new way to move beyond it. And, where that information's coming from, I'm just really the radio, hearing at different levels. So that's my sense of this stuff. Do I think that there's free will? I actually do. Do I think that there are things that may be destined or sort of notes that have to be hit in this sort of concerto that's our lives? Yes, I think that there probably are. I think that there are things that I've chosen to work through and to learn through, and that there are different lessons in a life. and that those circumstances are brought to me in my experience as an opportunity to learn through them.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because I think when your guys come through and talk about that, it's unfortunately this terminology of creating reality has gotten crazy. I feel like with the New Age kind of movement, where I see it all the time, especially on Facebook or social media sites. Your beliefs create this. And I believe that. Listen, I believe in the power of the mind too. There's no doubt about it, and I believe that beliefs will create things, and so on and so on. So I 100% believe that. But it's when you see, people, it's want, my, me, I.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Vision board.
Totally know.
I'm going to picture a Range Rover in my head, or I want power, I want success, I want money.
Yeah.
And to me, that just seems so egoic, and it's just such a waste of energy sometimes, where if I create the intention and I just surrender it to the divine, I just let go of it and allow it to allow my steps to be guided in some sort of a way, that it's totally different. Where I think your guys are speaking at it, that's what I just realized, that your guys are speaking at it in a totally different sense of what I'm thinking of it as create reality in the New Age type
totally
of term.
different. You've nailed it. I did a live stream last night, and this was pretty much their lecture was about this, and it was interesting. I mean, the guides teach on Wednesday nights, and they just sort of they do their thing, and they bring through the energy. But they were talking a lot about the prescriptions of the small self, and all of this crap that we were told to want, or all the stuff that we think that we want is what we were told to want. So they really are talking a lot about what aspect of the self is creating. Is it the true self, or is it the small self? My small self wants what he thinks he should have to affirm who he thinks he's supposed to be. The divine self, or the Christ itself, knows who he is and doesn't need the approval and doesn't need that to be, verified by a bigger condo or a fancy car or whatever. I mean, the old example, I think this is in I Am the Word, because they've taught this consistently, but they say, there's nothing wrong with a house on the hill. Somebody gets to live there. There's nothing wrong with having it. But if you want the fancy house so you can be the envy of your neighbors, or you can prove your worth at some level, or to, make somebody jealous or make people value you, you're creating in fear. And the guides say whatever you create in fear creates more fear. They say, look at every choice you've ever made that you made in fear, and you'll see that it probably got you more of the same. And so I think that, I completely agree with you, and it's one of the apt criticisms of the New Age is this kind of self-indulgence and this materialism. And I don't get it. You know what I mean? I don't understand it. I understand that the idea that thoughts are creative is sexy at a certain level, but if all we're doing is, and see, this is the funny thing, we're kind of doing it anyway. The guides that I work with say, look at your life. Everything in your life right now you're in agreement to, because it's there, which essentially agreement means vibratory accord. If there are things that are not working, you really need to stop agreeing to them, which is essentially, and they say agreement, it's like shaking hands with something. What you shake hands with, you hold. And they'll say accord, A-C-C-O-R-D, or they'll say A-C-H-O-R-D as in a chord on a piano, which means vibratory resonance. But, the idea of, collective claims is a whole other thing. Society, the whole last book that they just dictated, Book of Truth, they spent an enormous amount of time sort of clearing all of our agreements to what's supposed to be. And this is through societal agreement, inherited morality, religion, all of these things that sort of tell us how we're supposed to behave, who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to value, what beauty is, what love is. All of this stuff, in many ways, it's just inherited information that we keep calling into the present moment and affirming is true. And, if it is true, it'll last. It'll be true. But the guides say, and this is a really simple teaching that I love, and it's the most important teaching that I've really kind of gotten from them recently. They say, in truth, a lie cannot be held. And when you're operating in the vibration of truth, and that's who you are, I am in truth, I am aligned to truth, they say what is not in truth can no longer exist because a lie cannot be held at that level of agreement, at that level of vibration and consciousness. It's a really interesting teaching because then you begin to see pretty quickly what's not true and what doesn't really matter, but what we've been told to believe should matter, perhaps.
You said something there, and I know that the guys talk about this, and you said it a couple of times, that we're always in agreement, or we're always on a vibratory level, or we're in agreement to what we're being, or what we're doing, or what we're creating, or creation in our life, per se. So, again, I can only speak of my experience, where literally, like, I didn't ask to be a medium. Well, from my story was, I was bad in drugs and alcohol, got sober, and weird things just started happening in my 30s. You know what I mean? I don't remember, I hear mediums talk about 4 or 5 years, seen spirit and all this other stuff. Wasn't me. Everything's opened up. I got sober and so on. I guess then you're saying, the guys were saying on a deeper level, that I was in agreement to it, not consciously, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't consciously say, oh, you know what, this is cool, I'm going to, try some development classes on mediumship. So they're saying on a deeper level. Could that deeper level be, I guess it's a subconscious patterning or a programming, but that's really, can I look at it as the soul? Could that be, see, again, here
absolutely.
I go, spiritual destiny, I made this plan before coming here, or, the shift. I believe in free will. I 100% believe in free will. I think that what car we choose, what who we marry, maybe whatever it is, that you have those decisions to make. But some people, I do feel, and probably everyone, but some people on a deeper level, there's a basis to their life. For me, I look at now drug addiction. Well, that was my thing that I have to work through, right, in this lifetime for my soul's evolution or purpose. So is there, you feel as though, like for yourself too, Paul, here you are, you asked to be open, you got open, but now look at you. You are, all these books, you're becoming bigger and bigger. I'm watching your journey. I see you, all these new cities. I see people, following your teachings. My life's changing. Since I started reading I Am the Word again and doing the actual work and the intentions. So do you feel as though this is part of your spiritual destiny? Like you were to become this person, to bring through this teaching, and probably continue to go bigger and bigger with it?
Yes and no. I think that I managed to self-medicate through most of my early life. And when I stopped that at 25, that's when I opened up as well. So I actually think that I was that sensitive, and it was too hard to be that sensitive, so I was finding ways to stuff it. I was a heavy smoker up until 10 years ago or so, and it's when I stopped smoking that the channeling came through at the level that it does, and the empathic abilities that had been there when I first opened up in my 30s, and then had sort of subsided a bit because I was probably so toxic from the nicotine. When everything was out of my system, I was on fire and super sensitive and didn't know what to do with it, but that's the work I do now. When I look back at my life, it feels like I was being trained for the work that I'm doing now without even realizing that I was. I'd been a playwright, and playwriting is all about becoming characters and hearing voices. And I'd been a college teacher, and that was all about holding a space and a safe space for people to grow and express. And I love doing that work. And, everything sort of seems to support me in what I do now. Now, I'm doing this work, and I'm showing up for this work in some ways in spite of myself. I let go of both of my academic appointments, really within the last 9 months. And these are jobs I'd had for 25 years, and one of them I thought I would die in. I thought I'd retire from there. I'd been there so long. And this is how my work led me, or what my life has led me to. But I have baggage around this stuff. I have fear around this stuff. I don't understand it all the time. There are days I think, who am I to do this? I just show up. my agreement with my guides is to continue to show up. I don't have a desire to be a spiritual teacher. I don't have any interest in being a guru. I'm a guy with his own stuff that he's working through, and this is something that I seem to be able to have capability with or ability with, and I allow it to come through, and people seem to be helped. And that's it, you know. I mean, I can be somewhat challenged by people who I meet sometimes who are looking to be this, you know what I mean? Some people come in and say, how do I become a channel? I think, why the hell would you want to be a channel? I mean, really what I'm doing is taking dictation most of the time. It's like it's a higher level of stenography to a certain extent. I'm taking dictation. When I'm reading, at least I'm more present and I get to interpret things, you know, and I get to feel it and be other people. When I'm channeling a workshop, I'm there standing on my feet speaking in this odd accent for 5 hours a day, and I feel like I've just been through it. You know, I'm fascinated by it. Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for it. But I'm somebody that didn't even really believe in channeling. You know, that's not, I was raised an atheist. You know, I mean, this isn't my stuff. So I'm here anyway. You know, I'm here anyway. And maybe one day this will make sense. The guides that I work with have said, yes, I agree to this. You know, this is one of the things that I came for. I had an experience when I was about 5 years old that I've never understood, where I actually think I was being prepared, and only because there was something hovering over my bed talking to me that I had described as an angel, some guy in robes, you know, gold and glowing, but I remember him talking to me as I lay in my bed, but I also remember floating at the top of the ceiling looking down at the whole conversation. You know, but other than that, you know, I had my life. I'm still having my life. One of the funny things, I think, is that, you know, I've stopped thinking of all this as extraordinary. It's just part of the way my life is expressed. You know, that's it. I don't think it's you know, channeling has never gotten me a date. I'll tell you that much. You know, I mean, there's all these things that I wish it would do. Hasn't happened yet. Maybe one day. So that's my sense. I don't know if I'm answering this at all, but I identify with you. I think it shows me. I also think I was willing, but I also know, you know, when I first studied healing, and I was, maybe 30, and I'm 54 now, you know, I watched this old Irish lady stand in the middle of a room and say to this room full of people, everybody asks for one thing, you're going to get it. And I felt this current of energy go through my body, unlike anything I'd ever felt in my life. And what that lady gave me in that moment was an incredible sense of what was possible outside of what I had known. She showed me that this could be done. And at that moment in my life, that was defying all of the rules of how reality worked. And that was exciting for me because I came from a place where I thought, you know, if there is a God, if there is, that means absolutely nothing is as I thought it was. Nothing. You know, there's a line in the big book of AA. It says, God is everything or God is nothing. What's our choice to be? And that's a line that really landed for me. You know, it's the idea of convenient spiritual growth, you know, hasn't really registered, you know, and it's not really what my guides teach. They say this isn't the teaching of fixing it a little, or being a little happier, or getting the better relationship. It's really the teaching of knowing who and what you are. And it's from that place of being that your life actually manifests in a different way. Maybe not the way that the personality self thinks it should be. My personality self thought I was supposed to be a playwright and was terrified of letting go of teaching jobs and benefits and all of those things that I'd counted on. So that's my story.
Man plans and God laughs. That's what like that.
It's a good one.
Yeah, you know what? Too, it's interesting. You know, real quickly though, too. So, when you think of, I'm just thinking of someone in my mind for some reason, like Paramahansa Yogananda, or a sage, or someone like that, that, you know, really is about. I mean, obviously, you know, Yogananda was just big on the divine. You know, everything was, you know, mercy to God. You know, pray to God, and that kind of a thing. and even with his meditations. But it was like he surrendered, and he felt where to go and what to do, and I know God was calling me to America, and so he came here and started brought yoga over here. But do you feel as though, or do you think that the guides speak about some level of surrender? Now, before you answer that, I was just thinking of there's a book that has been out recently, maybe a year and a half ago, by Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul, but now he has another book that came out, The Surrender Experiment, My Journey into Life's Perfection, something like that. And I felt God, it was funny, that kind of like fell off the shelf, so I picked it up and I read it, and I said, oh my God, I mean, here's a guy that for 40 years, he basically just surrendered to what he called the hand of life, the universe, whatever it was, God, and literally went from, all these, I mean, what a crazy, amazing book and a journey in his life. But again, he surrendered. But he was a big, big meditator, so he could have cleared his own patterning out. So I know what, in line with the word, the guys talk about the patterning that we're on. And so he could have cleared his own thing out. But everything he did, next step forward, it just kept surrendering to it. So is there a surrendering in life? Or does I look at it, again, my experience was I surrendered to spirit in a sense where I feel. Now listen, that doesn't mean I don't make conscious will choices. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that majority of things, when I left my position at a family thing, I just kept getting these messages or signs. Trust. So I kept trusting and trusting. You know what I mean? So is there a surrender, or do you think that everything has to be on an intentional level?
Well, I mean, when you're talking, my guides are saying aligning. It's not difficult. I mean, there's another way to do it. To align to something is to go into vibrational accord with it. Now, I can't make myself surrender. I got to tell you, I wish I could. I've been trying to lose 40 pounds for a while now, and I'm not doing a very good job of it, and my will isn't fixing it, and I know that, and I'm not surrendering, So I don't know. I mean, today it's an interesting day to ask me that because it's been on my mind. The area of my life right now that's working very well, at least for this moment in time, has been this work. It's just sort of got its own trajectory. I just show up for it. I'm party to it, but I don't plan it, and it works. But I'm also not trying to control it. Do you know what I mean? I'm really not. I'm available to it and allowing it to be. But then again, I trust that it's being directed in a higher way than I would do it on my own. I really do, and that's working. The areas of my life that I'm not so happy with are the areas where I'm still trying to figure it out and make it work the way I think it's supposed to. So do I believe in surrender? Yes. I'm going to ask the guides. Surrender is one option. They're saying surrender is one option. You can also choose to move into accord, with that which is for your highest good and develop trust. And at that level of trust or agreement you can align to require, you can align to what you require to know yourself through in this way. The small self decides. The small self decides what he or she should have, what he or she should have or be, or claim to reinforce the belief, in who and what she is, in who and what she is. The divine self as what you are. The divine self as what you are, the truth of what you are. The truth of what you are is what you are surrendering to, is what you are surrendering to when you claim, I know who I am in truth. When you claim, I know who I am in truth, I know what I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. You're aligning to the vibration of truth. You align the will as well. And you align the will as well. The alignment of the will, or what you call will, or what you call will, agreement with the source, in agreement with its source will align you to what you require, The struggle that you speak of, or that surrender requires, is not necessary when you're accepting yourself. When you are accepting yourself as what you are, then you know what you're knowing. Then you are in agreement to your knowing and your realization, and you act in accord with that, and you act in accord with that, period. And then they're saying period. So that's their take on it.
I love it. And it answers a lot of questions for me because, like I said, it's been very interesting the past couple of months. And like I said, coming back to the I am the word when my daughter's giving it to me, saying, okay, I guess I'm supposed to read this again. And because that's just been on my mind more and more, spiritual destiny, or, again, should I be sitting in front of a vision board and just envisioning what I want? You know what I mean? And I don't, I feel blocked to that.
I get it. I'm having, the guys did a lecture last night, and they pretty much said throw out your lists. They say all of these lists that you want to check off is what you think you're supposed to have, and that's the small self trying to recreate what it's been told to want. And they said pretty much if you allow the divine self to claim for you, then it's going to work, So I thought that I had to make a list of all the qualities I wanted in a perfect partner and all of these things, and I'm now going, what am I doing here? So I'm in the same boat because I heard that lecture last night and I went, well, I thought I was supposed to exert control, and if my thoughts are things, what about all this? I actually want to go to them with this quickly. Yes, we would like to address this. They're saying, yes, we would like to address this because we have a question. They're saying you both have the same question. You're actually deciding. You are actually deciding the aspect of you that knows who he is already, that knows who he is already, which is the Christ, or the true self, or the true self is the one to be listened to, is the one to be listened to and has the answers you seek, and has the answers you seek. So remember history. So you are not replicating history by that claim. You're opening to the potential. You are opening to the potential of the true self, calling it to being, calling into being what it requires to know itself through on this plane, and this will be to your benefit, and this will be to your benefit, period. And they're saying period. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, makes total sense. And it's like, again, it's just great answers because it's been on my mind for a very long time, to be quite honest with you. The other thing I want to say too as well is it's in a sense where I know what I want, just for the readers, because we are coming down to there's a few minutes left here. For the readers, for the listeners, it is funny because I felt totally drawn. I've been seeing the thing on Facebook for the series that just started, I believe, last night, and I just didn't have time to get on there because I was putting my daughter to bed. But how do we go back, and I know we can go back and access that, or I know we can go back and sign up for it, pay for it, whatever. Is that through your website, or is that somewhere else? How do you go?
All on my website. Because
now I want to go and listen to what they said last night.
Yeah, I think that'll be up online for download. It's tomorrow, I would assume. We usually get them up in 48 hours. So if you sign up for the whole series, they'll actually send you each one if you're not able to attend live. You'll get the video or the audio and the video if you prefer. Some people like to just have the audio within 48 hours after each Wednesday evening session. But you can sign up for individual sessions or purchase old sessions or sign up for the whole series on the website. It's just there. Yes. And I think this is called, I don't remember what it's called, but it's the new one.
Yeah, I know it was last night because I kept seeing it. I was really drawn to it, and I said, again, because I felt like it's funny because you said in this interview that they answered some of this last night about throughout the list kind of a thing, and that's just been on my mind, and I felt totally drawn. Every time I passed it on my news feed, I got to sign up for this, but it's like right when my daughter was going to sleep, I said, you know what, I'll listen to the replay, and now you're talking about this, so it just makes more sense to me as well. Paul, let me ask you a quick question before I got about 6 minutes left here. Your guides speak of this revolution in consciousness on the planet. Can you just explain? I mean, obviously, I know we talked about read about it, and I am the word, but. Is there more people awakening to it? What is the revolution of consciousness?
Well, it's an odd question. I know this is one of those questions people get sent and I'm supposed to answer. I mean, the guides talk. They say when one person wakes up, they wake up 1,000 more. I mean, they've said that for a long time. What they're talking about now, as I said, which is a recreation of the physical realm that we're in through consciousness. And it sounds hokey, and I have a hard time with it, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. They say that the divine self, or the truth of who we are, bears witness to a world in a different way than the personality self. When the divine self, as the truth of who you are, is expressed as what you are, the manifested self in form, the manifested self can call other things into being through, I'll just say, vibrational accord. So what this pretty much means is the divine sees the divine in all things before him or her. In that witnessing, you're actually lifting this plane of experience to a higher way. And, it's an old metaphysical teaching. I don't think this is just my guides. But, when you witness the divine in someone else, you're claiming their divinity, and you're claiming the truth of who they are in spite of what they believe or, how they perceive themselves. You see, and that's shifting consciousness. You don't need anybody's permission because you're acknowledging what's already true. It has nothing to do with religion or belief systems. It's really just claiming the truth. If we're all an aspect of the same system, the same stuff, whatever you want to call it. Now, if you can sort of comprehend the possibility that many of us are now beginning to operate in that kind of way, the changes that can be known are quite different. The guides have said since the very first book that humanity is at a time of reckoning. And they're saying a reckoning is a facing of oneself and one's own creations. And they say what's been created in fear needs to be recreated in a higher way. And I think that's what they're teaching now, how to recreate this realm outside of the claims of fear.
When you speak of when you talk about the divine self, and the guys always bring to the divine self, would that be this? Is that the similar as the soul? Is the soul the divine self? Is that
no, I don't think so. I think the soul is what progresses. The soul progresses. I think the divine, I could be wrong on this accurate. They're saying I'm accurate. The divine self is himself. The divine self is the infinite self who always knows who he is, who always knows who he is, who's always in realization, who is always in realization of the Christ, or the divine, or the master self, or the manifested self as an aspect of God, and it's in the soul. It is in the soul of the soul of the soul of the soul. I hear the soul is operating distinctly in its progression. Period. That's what I get for now. So I'd have to figure that one out. I've kind of heard that before, like the higher self and the soul are different, accurate.
So
accurate.
So we're all God in form. We're all God in
that's
form
what they
in some way.
Well, they're saying we really are God in form. That's the trip. And, not in this sort of heretical, New Agey, ego-based way, but they say if God is everything, it's also the body you hold. And the fact that we actually hold the body as just, even the most spiritual of us, the body is the vessel of the soul, the container of the soul, still sort of turns the vessel into something less than the divine. And they say what that ends up doing is perpetuating this idea that God's in the clouds and we're stuck in the mud. And they say God's in the mud as much as the clouds. And the realization of that is actually what supports you in transforming the physical plane, because you can't transform what you are not part of. God in you, God in what you see before you. God as you, God as what you see before you. And it's all the same thing. That's how I understand it.
So interesting. Paul, first off, I just want to thank you for coming on. I know you've been doing a lot of interviews lately. I just had so many good questions. I thought they were good questions, at least.
They were great.
For the readers, I keep saying that, I don't know why. For the listeners, or people that have read your books. But, again, for everyone, paulselig.com. Let me spell it, PaulSelig.com. You can go to his website. You could find out where he is. He's based out in New York City. You still do private readings, correct?
I do, yep.
Yeah, so you could private readings, but he also does them over the phone. But you can find out his workshops, lectures, old series from the guides channeling, obviously are up on there too as well. So, again, I just want to say thank you, Paul, for coming on and joining us tonight.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Talk to you soon, Paul. Bye-bye.
Well, bye-bye now.
Well, there you have it, Paul Selig. Again, I was really excited to have him on because I had a lot of questions. If you've never experienced any of his books, I would suggest to go out and buy the first one, I Am the Word. I've read it. I've listened to it. I'm in the process of reading it again because I felt guided to go back and read it. This time I'm actually reading the book instead of listening to it because there's specific work that they speak of, his guides in here, creating these intentions that they're bringing you through, or affirmations really, of releasing things, releasing old patterns, healing the physical body. So there's something for everything in there. So I would suggest if it's something that struck a chord tonight and you listen to and you feel gravitated to listen to or to do this type of work, check out I Am the Word. You could probably I'm sure it's on Amazon and everything else. So I just want to say thank you for everyone for calling in. I thought we were going to get the calls when I listed this again. I was hoping to get to some calls, but I just knew, I also figured that we were going to have a lot to talk about, to be quite honest with you. So I thank everyone that's been calling in. I apologize to everyone that's on the switchboard because there's a lot of people on there. It was just so much information. So I'll make sure next month on my show I'll get you someone that we can call in, and we'll do some readings too as well. I know next week Pat Longo has her show next Thursday. I'm not really sure who's on there, but definitely check in. Click the link or click the follow button on the show page to stay informed because there's other hosts, Melissa Kubias, another medium, Pat Longo, energy healer, Stacey McKenna, also too, as well as the transformational coach, and we all share each other's Thursdays. Same time, 7:30. Click the follow button on the show. And again, thanks for listening in, guys. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
There is more to me, Queen Eliara of Elfgard, than my elven magic. Just as there's more to Geico than saving you money, Geico also gives you 24/7 access to licensed agents online, on the phone, or on the Geico app. And while I am a mighty elf queen, I am also a mighty big fan of barbecue potato chips. Minions! More smoky mesquite.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.